Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to the 181st episode of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. We are coming to you early on the East Coast, Thursday morning, January 9th, just a few hours. And when I say a few hours, I do mean a few hours after Duke takes down Georgia Tech in Atlanta, 73-64. Donald Wine here. I'm back in DC. I'm not in the wind that is Honolulu, Hawaii anymore. I am here with my resident AT alien, Jason Evans, who was at the game last night. Jason, how's it going this morning?
It's going good. Yeah, you're right. I appreciate you getting on the podcast and us being able to do this. I'm operating on maybe 5 hours sleep because, I was at the game. I teased over the weekend that I was going to be at the game and get in the locker room and talk to Coach K, and I got to do all those things. It was fabulous, a lot of fun, a really interesting game. There's a lot to talk about. If I hadn't even gotten to do any of that stuff, I think this is a game that's really worth unpacking and discussing. It's gonna be a lot of fun. And by the way, to the fans out there, I want to apologize for some of the audio issues on the last podcast. Like Donald said, he was outside in the wind. I was having some internet issues that maybe made it sound occasionally like I was underwater. We will fix these things. We will make it better. The quality of the DBR matters.
I'm not going to apologize for being in Hawaii. I'm just going to apologize for the weather there.
Not.
So, but let's move on. We last night, Duke again went down to Atlanta to face the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They emerged 73-64 winners in a game that basically an hour after we recorded last week, we found out that Wendell Moore was out indefinitely with a broken hand. He had surgery to fix that hand and will be out an undetermined period of time. There was issues in the first half and the second half with the energy on offense and defense and the sloppiness. But Jason, you were there. Tell us what you saw from your vantage point in the crow's nest that is the press box.
Yeah, so it was a fascinating game to sit there and watch, and really, sort of a tale of different games happening at different times. The final score doesn't even come close to indicating how close this game was. It was a one possession game for the final, 5 to 7 minutes. In the second half, Duke had a lead, a sizable lead that we got in the first half. And then in the second half, Tech actually took a lead. Looked like Tech was going to run away. There was a fascinating little moment where Tech was starting to pull away from Duke, and Coach K went to a lineup. And I'm going to talk a lot about the lineups that Coach K used this game because there's some fascinating rotation things that happened. And I asked
don't say rotations. We're going to say rotations.
Right. We'll get to that. People will understand. There are fascinating depth things that happened in this game, but there was a cool moment where we were down and it looked like things weren't going to go that great. And Coach K went with Javin DeLaurier and Jack White, Jay Gold, Trey Jones, and Cassius Stanley. Cassius being a 20-year-old freshman, the freshman the age of a sophomore or junior. For all this talk always about the freshmen and how the game is dominated by the young guys, in some key moments in the second half, Coach K was going with as experienced a lineup I think as he can put on the floor. I mean, maybe if you put Alex O'Connell in there for Cassius Stanley or something like that, you get a little more experience, but it's not a lot. I mean, this was Coach K going to his experience. But let me back up. Sorry, I got so much to say about this game. Georgia Tech came out, and you could sense in the building. It was interesting. The place was packed. Georgia Tech does not sell out a lot. I think there was something like the 20th sellout in their past 7 years. But they had a sold-out crowd there. There was a good contingent of Duke fans. I'm sure you could hear it on television. When Duke scored, there were cheers. In fact, at one point in the second half, the Duke fans started chanting, "Let's go Duke." And, that's what you heard in the arena. It was kind of like, whoa. And then the Tech fans started chiming in with, "Let's go Tech." And they were battling each other for a little bit, and the Duke fans were holding their own. But anyway, there's tons of energy in the building at the start. And Georgia Tech came out excited and active. James Bank and Moses inside were very active. They were doing lots of good interior passing. Tech was breaking Duke down on defense. They were getting in the lane and making the extra pass. We weren't rotating well on defense. They were getting incredibly easy shots. It was very concerning, and it's the kind of defense that this Duke team has not played. They are usually much better on defense. And then Coach K fixed everything. And the way he fixed everything is a man named Jordan Goldwire, Jay Gold. I got to tell you, so we get to halftime, and I'm looking at the halftime stat sheet that they give me in the press box. Jordan Goldwire has played 16 minutes and 47 seconds of the first half. And I'm looking through the stat sheet. He has 2 points, 1 steal, 1 assist. I mean, that's not exactly filling up the box score for a guy who plays 17 minutes. But I was like, yeah, he was the MVP of the first half. Like, it's not even a close call.
So, yeah. Jason, I'm glad you brought up Jordan Goldwire, because I want to bring up his full line stat, which was 2 points, 2 rebounds, 2 points, 2 assists, and 2 steals. So in the second half, he got 1 assist and 1 steal. And he still was the MVP of the game, because he changed everything on defense. I mean, just coming in, his energy, that was, this is something that I alluded to on the podcast, is that when we're on the road, we have to start off with intensity from the opening tip, because the other team absolutely will. We talked about how this was going to be their Super Bowl, and they very much, Georgia Tech played like it was. James Banks had 7 blocks. He was active on all ends of the floor. His energy led to a lot of their momentum, and it took us till the 9-minute mark of the first half before we finally took the lead and kind of, opened up a lead before halftime. In the second half, it was the same deal. The same energy. We came out flat-footed. We came out sloppy, and Jordan Goldwire was brought in to kind of calm everything down. And
wait. Actually, you're wrong about that. Jordan Goldwire started the second half, played the entire second half. In fact, I think this is amazing. So he came in at like the 17-minute mark of the first half, and he came in for Joey Baker, who basically did not play in this game. Jay Gold comes in. He went out for like 30 seconds at around the 9-minute mark, and then he did not come out for the rest of the game. This is a kid who played 37 minutes in this game. It was unreal. And later on, folks will hear, I spoke to him in the locker room, and I talked to him a little bit about that. So, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. And also, I'm glad you brought up the end of the game when we were talking about Javin DeLaurier and Jack White being called on to make big plays, especially on defense. Javin had a couple of key blocks in the last few minutes there that really helped make what was like a 1 or 2 point game become the 9-point victory that it was. So I really enjoyed.
And by the way, Jack White had a big 3-pointer. Jack White had a big 3-pointer. And Javin DeLaurier had a couple big free throws on a day when Duke wasn't hitting free throws. Javin was a guy who hit them for us.
So again, the one thing that we talk about in every single game is that that's probably the one thing that really happened last night, is that the victory and the unsung hero comes from a different person every single night. Last night, it's Jordan Goldwire playing 37 minutes. It's Javin DeLaurier with his key blocks. It's Jack White with his key defense and his key offense, shooting free throws, and Javin DeLaurier with free throws and 3-pointers. It was leadership. And at the end of the day, there was, I thought Vernon had an off game. We'll talk about that a little bit later, because I think other people had different opinions on how he played. But also, it wasn't because he was doing anything bad. It was just sloppy. And at the end of the day, Georgia Tech was really that, they were on their game and they were trying to play. They had a great, great game.
Yeah, well, and regarding Vernon, and again, he's another guy that I got to talk to in the locker room, and we talked about this. James Banks of Georgia Tech. I have a note. I took these notes, and one of my notes says, James Banks owns Vernon Carey. And he really did. I mean, look, I love you, Vernon. And Vernon's having a great, incredible season for Duke. But, boy, James Banks came to play and absolutely dominated the inside in this game. At one point, there were folks on press row who were like, I'm kind of, a guy in press row next to me said, I'm kind of rooting for overtime when it looked like the game might go to overtime. And I was like, oh, really? Why? And he said, because if there's overtime, James Banks is going to get a triple-double, because the dude had 14 or 15 points and rebounds each. And he was on his way to a triple-double in block shots. He had 7 block shots, and if we played another 5 minutes, I think he might have gotten to 10. Dude was protecting the rim like nothing ever. All right, I want to go back a little bit, just really quickly. Indulge me back to the first half a little tiny bit, because one of the things I noticed in this game was when guys would make a mistake, Coach K had kind of a short hook, a short leash, I should say. He had a quick hook, a short leash. And a guy would make a mistake, and you'd see someone get off the bench immediately to go in to replace him. Talking about Jordan Goldwire, one of the things I noticed is, and part of it is he doesn't try to do a lot on offense. He doesn't make the mistakes on offense. Like, he never commits a turnover. And so once he gets in the game, Coach K is like, wait, there's no reason to pull him out. He's not making mistakes. He's not making mistakes on defense. He's not making mistakes on offense. He's just, keeping the machine humming along. And so Coach K never took him out and never wanted to take him out. And let me tell you, like, Joey Baker had a really bad traveling violation, sit on the bench. Cassius Stanley in the second half didn't have, defensive energy, and then made a really bad entry pass to Vernon Carey and the coach. And, like, literally it happens, and you see Coach K immediately react. And sometimes he's off his chair and calling a timeout, and sometimes it's someone's getting up and going in the game. Like when Cassius Stanley had that play in the second half, let me tell you, Georgia Tech ran down, got a transition basket. Coach K calls timeout, and I'm not sure if you guys could see it on television. He had a clipboard in his hand. Bam! He threw that thing to the ground hard. Coach K was mad at Cassius. He was like in Cassius's grill in a big, big, big way. So anyway,
but when you talk about real quickly, you talk about things like that, and one of the guys on offense that responded in a big way was Cassius Stanley. We talk about we had an email from a guy. We talked about dunking the life out of a gym. My man Cassius Stanley did that last night with one. Oof. He had a couple that there was one that silenced the crowd, and there was one that made him stop. So going back to the first one, it was basically a long transition. He started at the back, sprinted all the way to the basket. Trey Jones from half court throws a lob to him, and he grabs it and dunks it over a guy and gets the N1. And that was one that kind of silenced him.
Say that one. That was the sick thing about that was I was like, Cassius wasn't really open.
Right.
Trey tossed it up there, and he's like,
Trey tossed it there, like he's the only one that's going to get this ball.
Yeah. A guy, the guy on press row next to me, after that one went through, he said, that was disrespectful.
It was. So this is in street ball terms. They were both on an elevator, and he was going to the 7th floor and dropped my man off on the 5th. Like, yep. he kept going. Then the next play down, he gets the ball, and it's kind of one of those broken plays that we're inside of 7 seconds, and he says, you know what? Instead of just trying to jack up a three, I'm just going to drive the lane and dunk it in everybody's face. He did it again, and then 2 plays later, he comes down, and probably the dunk of the night, he collects an alley-oop from Trey Jones and one-hand tomahawks it.
Oh, it was sick.
And when I tell you that, this is the one that shut the gym down. If you go back and look at it on the broadcast or just look at any replay, behind him on that side, the TV side, is where a lot of the students sit, and they're jumping up and down going nuts. You see 5 of them when the ball is in the air, they're jumping what? That's not, no. He's not catching that. And when he catches it with one hand, they all just stop jumping. And you can see everyone go,
this is about to happen.
Oh no. And you can see their slow motion reactions in real time. It's fantastic. But if you guys have not seen this play, just turn on the TV this morning. You will see it.
So anyway, that's awesome, and that was incredibly fun, and it got us back in the game. That's the other thing. It wasn't like one of these games Duke's up by 20 or anything like that. Those were nip and tuck possessions. But anyway, I keep on going. Let's go back to the first half. Back in the first half, so Duke's behind. Like I said, James Banks is owning Vernon Carey. Tech's getting easy baskets. My man Jay Gold comes in, makes 0 mistakes, raises our energy on defense. This weird thing happened where Duke goes on an 18-2 run from the 9-minute mark for the next 6 minutes. Duke goes on an 18-2 run, and basically it was all the defense. I mean, Tech only scores 2 points in those 6 minutes. And the cool thing about the defense was it wasn't necessarily rim protection, blocking shots. It wasn't lots of steals. It was that we were so frustrating Tech on offense that they were getting lousy shots, or they were maybe not even getting shots. I feel like the shot clock just kept on going off. Sometimes it was going off because Tech was making a violation, and sometimes it was going off just because Tech was trying to beat the shot clock. And it was this incredible defense that Duke is able to play. And Shane, Donald, you know who Shane Ryan is a writer. He college basketball writer, writes about Duke a pretty fair bit. And he occasionally comes on the DBR forum. And Shane Ryan came on the DBR forum and posted something, and I loved it. It was really great. He said, we need to come up with a word. We need to come up with some kind of phrase for this moment where the Duke's perimeter defensive pressure just absolutely causes the opposing team to give up. Now, this is in the first half, and we thought Tech was gone. We thought Tech was done. But he said, I don't know if we call it the blue wall or something like that, which I thought was a pretty good name. But he's like, we need to come up with a name for this, because in the first half, that's what Duke did to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was like, I can't handle this. And they just gave up. I'll tell you something I said at halftime. It was Jay Gold. It was Jordan Goldwire who caused that defensive pressure to happen to a large extent. And I noted, and some people on the forums kind of like this, I said, Trey Jones is sort of the leading contender for Defensive Player of the Year nationwide. All the experts out there say that he is, and we know, an incredible defender, incredibly instinctive, gets all these steals and stuff like that. He's the leading contender for Defensive Player of the Year, and he's probably the second best defender on his own team because of Jordan Goldwire. So that's just, I can't say enough about the game I thought that Jay Gold had.
Yeah, if we were doing Player of the Week this week, it'd be pretty clear who it is for both of us, at least. And we're going to do that just as a note for you guys out there. We're going to be doing a little bit more of these smaller podcasts just to kind of make it so that the weekend ones are more in depth with what the things that are prevalent to our team or previewing upcoming games. We want to focus on that and kind of take some of these little things out and make it so that you guys get to hear a lot more of us over the week. So we're going to fast forward to after the game. Obviously, Jason was in the building. He was on press row. He was able to go in the back in the locker room to listen to Coach K's speech and also get some audio from some of the players. So, Jason, why don't you tell us who you talked to and kick it to those audios?
Yeah, absolutely. So we go to the press. We go to the locker room first before we got to listen to Coach K. And in the locker room, I walked in. I was able to talk to Jordan Goldwire. I was able to talk to Vernon Carey. I was able to talk to Cassius Stanley, actually in order. If you can't tell, it's Vernon first, then Jay Gold, then Cassius Stanley. I wanted to talk to more players. I actually had another question I wanted to ask Cassius, but we ran out of time. You're only allowed a limited amount of time there in the locker room. But let's let the folks listen in. And by the way, so some of my questions, some of what I'm talking to these guys about is things about the specific game, about the Georgia Tech game, and some of it's about larger issues and that kind of stuff. And I think it's interesting to hear their answers. Let's go ahead and play that audio now.
So, Vernon, there's been a lot of talk about you for Player of the Year nationally, and yet tonight you go out there. James Banks had a great game against you. What was he doing that sort of, confused things for you a little bit?
Just his length, really, and just disrupting me on the offensive end, really. I was just trying to post up early and try to go through him, but I just wasn't capitalizing, really.
So, do you have any comment about all this? It's going crazy, this talk that you're in the running for Player of the Year nationally.
I'm just focused on my team, really. My main goal is just to win a national championship and an ACC championship, really. So, if those accolades come with that, then so be it. But I'm just worried about that, really.
Can you talk really quick the difference between playing in high school and what you're experiencing here in college? Because I understand, I've heard you weren't a huge post player in high school, and here you're dominating the post.
Yeah, just the physicality and just adjusting the physicality, really. It's just a step up when you go from high school to college, so just that, really.
But how'd you learn these post moves?
I had something in high school, but now, I developed it over the summer, really, with our assistant coaches, Coach Shire, Nate, and Sewell. So, yeah.
Impressive. Thanks a lot, man. Do you think? Hey, Jordan. Hey, incredible game today. I got to tell you, I was At halftime, I said you had 2 points, 1 steal, 1 assist, and I said clearly the MVP of the first half was Jordan Goldwire. How are you able to impact the game so much just through your defense?
Yeah. It's just something I guess I've been accustomed to doing. Just coming in, bringing energy, just trying to pressure the ball, not allow my men to score. So just something I got used to at this point.
So you play, I wasn't sure. I think you played every minute of the second half. Am I right? You played like 16 minutes in the first half. That's a lot of time. Were you expecting that? I mean, had Coach K given you any kind of indication that, hey, if it's a close game, you're my man the whole time?
He didn't tell me, but just over the last couple games, I've been playing a lot more minutes. So I didn't know I was going to stay in the whole second half, but once he did, I was cool with it, most definitely.
You're from Atlanta. Was it nice in homecoming? Did you have a lot of fans there, a lot of family?
A bunch of friends and family. I see them in the crowd, so definitely excited to get a chance to see them right after this.
Tell me about your philosophy on defense. What is it you're trying to accomplish? Is just stay in front of my man and be active? I mean, give me some hints if I want to play defense like Jordan Goldwire.
Just pressure the ball. Just try to keep the guy in front of you, like you said, but more so just try to make them uncomfortable, turn their back, and just make it difficult for them to make passes as well.
Awesome. Well, keep it up, man. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, so Cassius Stanley, you had a couple unbelievable dunks in the second half. Do you see it coming? Do you just take off and the ball's there? Let me live a little bit through your dunking.
Pretty much anytime Trey gets a steal or gets the ball and it's a fast break, I just try to find my lane and just get open. And I don't even really yell at him, say anything. He knows I'm going to get open for him, and I know he's going to throw the ball up, and that's what we do.
Talk about the transition from high school to college ball. I mean, has it – because let's be honest, you weren't the highest touted of all the freshmen coming here to Duke, and yet you're the guy who's been starting every single game and getting huge, major minutes.
College, I like college. I like college basketball, I like coach. I just stayed grounded, really. High school, I felt like I wasn't really tapping into my full potential. I felt like I was, there were so many other things, but now it's kind of just like school, basketball. And, that's really why I chose Duke as well. It's like a place like this where, it's just school, basketball, especially coming from Los Angeles where it's like fast-paced, so many things you can get into. So I think it's just like change of scenery, honestly.
So you say you're loving school, you're loving Duke. Have you thought at all about, I know you're not going to make any announcements, but have you thought about being one and done or anything like that? Your father's a sports agent, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, have you guys begun thinking about it?
No, not at all. Me and my dad, we really just talk like father-son. My whole life we talked father-son. We never talked like, tell me what you think I should do business-wise or anything like that. So so we don't talk about that at all. We just he talks about, just playing the best basketball I can each day and, just trying to win a national championship. That's really the goal because, you don't want to be doing all this to not get close. And this is all we do.
All right, thanks, Cash. Appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Ash.
So, Jason, I really, first of all, it's always cool when we get to have somebody in the locker room to get these clips. So thank you for living in Atlanta and being able to come to this game. But the one thing that I'll start with Vernon Carey. You asked a very, not necessarily a pointed question, but a question that I'm sure was getting a lot of about James Banks and his length and how it was frustrating to him, despite the fact that he has these National Player of the Year accolades. And I liked his answer. Not necessarily because it was something that I didn't expect, but really because he's like, hey, this guy had a good game. And he knows he has to learn to play some nights where he's not going to be the focal point of the offense or at the end on defense, or it's not going to come easy to him. I thought he battled very hard during this game. And I thought that he showed a lot of poise when it comes to a guy who really, the first half, his energy was just everywhere. And that's usually Vernon Carey. And Vernon Carey had someone match him last night. I thought that was pretty good how he responded to that. So I really appreciated that question.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is we talk all the time about the fact that teams get up for playing Duke, and they do. They absolutely 100% do. Well, but if you're a big man, you're going to get extra up because you're not just playing Duke, you're playing Vernon Carey, who's the front runner for National Player of the Year and is widely considered the best big man in basketball. So if you're James Banks, you've got two motivations there. You know, I'm playing against this stud, I'm playing against a stud team. And I think Vernon Carey has to adjust and get used to that kind of thing. It's going to happen more and more often. I'm not saying there are going to be other guys who are going to have the kind of game against him that James Banks did, but he's going to see that kind of energy. Guys are going to know I can make a reputation for myself. I can show NBA scouts I can play with another NBA player. I can make my case for being a future NBA or a future All ACC, whatever it may be. Because I'm playing on such a big stage against such an important player.
Funny note about Cassius Stanley. I don't think he got to this when you were talking to him, but apparently he was asked to rate his dunk, the third one, the tomahawk dunk, and he said something to the effect of, "I thought it was the worst of the bunch, but now looking at it, man, that's amazing." Like even he even amazed himself with that dunk, which I thought was really funny. And the final thing I will say before we go to the Coach K audio is with Jordan Goldwire, you asked about, hey, I thought you were the MVP of the first half, even though you only had 2 points, and you ended up playing like 36 or 37 minutes. And he was like, hey, I got to be ready to play every single day. And I liked that that mentality is there. And we'll get to that with Coach K because he has some comments on that. But you can tell that these guys are ready to play at any moment, and they're ready to play 2 minutes or 40 minutes the entire game. So I like that everyone's dialed in, and there's not a lot of people who are like, I'm a starter, I'm a sixth man, I'm a seventh man. All these guys play like they are supposed to be starting the game, and it's just happenstance that they're coming off the bench.
Well, and as you will hear in just a couple moments, they get that from their leader. Coach K absolutely espouses that and talks about that. In fact, I spoke to him about it directly, and he had some really interesting comments about it. So let's play. So after we're done with the players, they take us upstairs, and all the media gets to talk to Coach K. The beginning of this audio is mostly him talking about the game. But at a certain point, I ask a couple questions about Duke's depth, not Duke's rotation. Everyone's going to enjoy this, and then I really think folks stick around because Coach K's last answer is a fascinating one where he talks about the general state of the college basketball game. But let's get to that audio now. Here's Coach K in the post-game press conference.
It was just a heck of a game. They're a very good basketball team, and now that they got their whole team together, that's their sixth game. I think they can, play with anybody, and it's a big time win for us because their crowd was great. They were really good, and they knocked us back at the beginning of each half, and our kids responded. Our defense, the last 12 minutes of the first half was outstanding, and I thought Javin gave us a big boost in how he ran the court. And in the second half, they came out and we gave them 9 quick points, and it looked like the whole thing was going to turn. And our kids showed some amazing toughness. They really hung in there. Cassius, who was not playing as well as he has been playing, played great. He responded, coming off the bench after a timeout and made some sensational plays. And then, I just think our kids were real tough, and they made some big plays. Trey and Jordan Goldwire defensively, and Trey hit a big bucket. And one of the big buckets was the offensive rebound on the free throw by Vernon, which gave us a 2-possession lead. And then our defense was good. Their big guys, really hammered us on the boards, but they were 10 for 31. So, that worked out well. And we beat a really good team in a very tough environment, and both teams played played really hard tonight. So it's a heck of a win for our kids. Any questions?
You put Delarie in with about 2 minutes to go. What were you looking for him to do there, and did he give you what you wanted?
Yeah, just some energy and on defense. You know, a big change in the first half. We had to change how we defended the ball screen, and they were just killing us. And then we read it or trapped it, and that worked for the half. And in the second half, we didn't do it as well, and they kind of responded, and we had to, change a little bit with that. And Javin, and Jack made a couple big plays, the 3, but also a block. It's the way our team's been. It's like a collection of guys, hopefully doing enough to come up with a big time. That's a big time win tonight.
Were you surprised by your defense around the rim with those 2 post players and Wright and Banks, and how well you kind of handled them?
Well, I don't know. Not with our rebounding, but yes, overall, because they also had to defend the ball screen with Alvarado, and Alvarado's a very, very crafty guard. So that's not easy for a big guy to help with that and still play the big. And so overall, good. But it's going to be where they went some and we went. It was that kind of game. I thought both teams played so hard, and the crowd was great. I thought they really supported their team, and it was that made the win even a little bit bigger for us.
You mentioned how Cassius responded coming off the bench. What was sort of his demeanor in that timeout, and what was sort of your message?
No, he wasn't playing aggressively, and he was going to have a 0 stat line, except they would have gotten pluses, and for a freshman, especially to turn that around in a game, an away game where you're not getting, that's huge. It shows a lot about that kid. He made some sensational plays, and he ran the court a couple times, big time. The Javin in the first half and him in the second. Those were a little bit. They differentiated us. It made it. We won that round, so to speak, in a 15-round fight. So.
You think James' length bothered Vernon?
I'm sorry?
You think James' length bothered Vernon throughout the game?
I think James's length will bother a lot of people. But for Vernon, overall, I thought he did a really good job. It's his 15th college game, and also he now is the focal point of people trying to stop us. So that's a lot in 2 months into this. Vernon's done a great job, and I thought in the second half we were not strong with the ball, and they came out strong, and we were catching it with one hand, and all of a sudden, boom, they got it and go. And then once he put 2 hands on it, it was a little bit different.
Coach, what would you say is the biggest reason for the miscues from the free throw line for your team tonight?
Human. Yeah. You wake up every day happy and go lucky, or it's just human being. Like also when you're in a fight or in a game like that, you're tired. So overall, we've been shooting really well on the free throw line, and we hit enough to win. So I'm not worried about the free throws.
Coach.
And by the way, one of them turned into 2 points. I should have told you we called a play on that, but we didn't. That was just the play.
Coach, 2 questions related to the rotation somewhat.
But we don't have a rotation.
Okay, the depth. Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, so
guys.
Yeah, so throughout the season, one of the hallmarks of the team has been 9, 10. Obviously, you couldn't go 10 deep, but 9 deep. This game, it felt like things shrunk up a little bit, and related to that, Jordan Goldwire plays like almost 37 minutes. Talk about his play and.
Jordan was, even though if you look at the stats, he has 2 points, and he and Trey together played really good defensively, and he gave us the athleticism. That's one thing with Wendell out. Wendell is a great athlete, and most of the time you can have 2 and sometimes 3 outstanding athletes, Trey being one of them, Jordan Goldwire, Cassius, Wendell, Alex is a good athlete. Joey is a good shooter. Not that he's a bad athlete. And so not having Wendell affects that in a game like this, where you have to defend all three perimeter positions pretty well. Because their kid Park, he hit a couple big buckets for him.
But did you have a notion that Jordan was going to play a lot for you this game?
Yeah, I have a notion he's going to play a lot in every game. And I started him in the second half. And all our guys should consider themselves starters because you're not playing behind anybody. When someone comes in, you don't have to be like the guy you came in for. All you have to do is be you. And then we have a little bit different look. And that's the kind of thing we've tried to build our team on. And defensively, if we have more athleticism in, then we're probably going to pressure the ball better, probably move it down the court a little bit more. And so you have different looks by having different people in the game. And it just kind of happens. And our guys have everyone on our team knows that they're important. None of them are complimentary players. All of them are good basketball players. And when they're in there, they need to think of themselves as being starting basketball players.
Anything else for Coach?
Coach, why do you think that we're seeing some of the unpredictability in the college basketball game, specifically this season?
Yeah, because we haven't kept. There's so much attrition. It's not just the guys after 1 or 2 years going pro. You probably have 70 to 80 kids who tested the waters who were not drafted, who didn't return for college basketball. You can't take that type of a hit along with the guys that normally go. And we haven't kept up to date yet. We've made a whole bunch of changes, but we haven't figured out how it affects our game. And it's affected our game. There is, really kind of anybody can win. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that's what's happened. And as long as we have it going the same way, you're going to have that same attrition. We almost had 1,000 transfers. Crazy. If you looked at this as a business, the amount of guys going, the amount of guys testing, the amount of guys transferring. Whoa. Whoa. It's a lot. It's a lot. We have not kept up with it. As whoever is leading our game, and tell me who that is, by the way. I don't think there is anybody. We're like, there aren't any Westerns anymore. But if I'm old enough to walk, when you lose the reins and the horse, that's kind of how we are. It's just going, man. It's just going. But it's such a great game, it can handle that for a while. But it's going to need some help. I'm telling you, it's going to need some help.
All right, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
So you probably heard it there. I used the word rotation, and Coach K went, "We don't have rotations." And I went, "Okay, sorry. Depth? Can I say depth?" The funny thing is, Coach K kind of has a reputation for if someone asks him a question that he thinks is dumb, he immediately calls them out for it. And I was that guy.
Congratulations.
Yeah. At every press conference, there has to be some guy who in the press corps that Coach K gets to go, "What the hell are you asking me? That's a silly question."
What did you win? Did you get like a coupon to the varsity or something?
Yeah. And by the way, Coach K is really funny. I'm not sure how well it came across in the audio. There are a number of times that the press guys, we all kind of chuckled and laughed at some of his answers. He's a great interview. The players, they're still learning. Sometimes their answers are kind of pat and obvious, but Coach K, he
has 45 years of experience at this point.
Yeah,
so
you can ask him anything, and he will give you a really interesting response. And I thought, especially his stuff about the state of the college basketball game. By the way, I think he's been listening to the podcast because a few weeks ago I was talking about this, that the drain on the college basketball game from guys turning pro early, not necessarily even guys who are making the NBA, guys who are going to the G League or to play foreign ball or whatever. Coach K said, "Look, we're taking the talent out of the game, and that has to impact things." And I thought that was really, really interesting. And he basically, at one point, he's like, "So there's who's in charge? I don't know. No one's in charge of college basketball. He's calling for a czar. He's calling for someone to really be in charge of the sport. And he's 100% right about that. But I mean, it was fascinating to hear him. Like the question that he got asked was not, "Hey, assess the state of college basketball." It was like, "Hey, what's going on this year?" Some teams are, there are a lot of upsets, and suddenly Coach K is in on, the philosophy of what's going on in the game. Like, he thinks on a different level than the rest of us. That's for sure.
He's in 30-20 and we're in 2020. That's how that works. I really, first of all, getting a question into Coach K, because you could tell on the audio you were trying to get it in a couple times and you were just waiting your turn and you finally got your opportunity. So way to get out there. And here's the thing. I'll be able to watch this on the video of the press conference and I can hear him like, "Oh, that's Jason." But that was really cool that you were able to do that. But the question you had was actually very interesting because, again, we talk about the depth and you talked about how we've had 10, 11 guys play considerable minutes at times during the year. And last night it was really only 7 that played more than 10 minutes. So I liked his answer in the fact that he's like, everyone's a starter. And that's something that you kind of think, yeah, that makes sense. But really, when you think about it, everybody who plays at Duke could be a starter somewhere else in college basketball, and they're all here. And sometimes you have to come here with that mindset that you're not going to start every game. You're not going to play. You're not going to get 10 minutes a game. And this year, it seems like everybody has bought into that fact that, hey, I could play 30 minutes today. I could play 3 minutes today. But when I'm in there, I got to make an impact. And you saw it last night. Again, our impact comes from different people every night. Our the guys we lean on change from night to night. And, last night we had, Jordan Goldwire was the hero of the game, and he didn't register a stat line that if you looked at the stat line, you'd be like, why did this guy play 37 minutes? There's intangibles out there that these guys are looking for. And the coaching staff is doing a great job at making sure that everyone knows that when they go in the game, they're going to make an impact in some way on that game.
Yeah, and I thought it was fascinating when Coach K was talking a little bit about the different players and the depth, and he talked about Jordan Goldwire's athleticism and how important that is to his role on the team. And he goes, and then he got down to Joey Baker and he was saying, "Oh, this guy's an athlete. This guy's an athlete." And Joey Baker goes, "Joey's a shooter,"
Yeah.
which is he's not disrespecting Joey Baker. He's absolutely right about that. He's just sort of saying, Joey isn't quite the athlete that these other guys are, but he brings another very, very valuable skill to the table. And I think you're 100% correct. I mean, look, we've already seen games where Joey Baker was a huge impact player for Duke. It was apparent to Coach K in the 4 minutes that Joey played in this game that wasn't going to happen in this game because, Tech's playing, more athletic guards. They're playing guards who probably are a little better defensively, and it wasn't going to work for Joey. And so those minutes, Joey Baker's regular minutes, and Wendell Moore's minutes all went to Jordan Goldwire. I think it's going to be fascinating. I'm interested in seeing who are the starters next game this weekend because, it feels like you play 37 minutes, Jordan Goldwire, you're probably going to be a starter, but you never know. Like Coach K said, everybody's a starter. Everybody on this team's had chances to start and has played huge, huge roles in different games. Really, really fascinating. It was a great game to be at. I think a really important game in Duke's season. Like Coach K said in that post-game press conference, Georgia Tech's a very, very good team. They're a better team than their record indicates, a better team than they were a few weeks ago because they got some key players back. And Duke, I thought this was a really good way. Like we said, the final margin doesn't indicate the size of the win, but there are not a lot of ACC teams that are going to win at Georgia Tech this year. Duke held, by the way, that was the 6th straight team that Duke has held under 65 points. The defense is the hallmark of this team. I really, really believe that. The defensive energy that we're able to put out there, that's the key to this team fully realizing their potential and cutting down nets in March and April.
And really quickly, I talked about this earlier in the podcast when we were talking about Vernon Carey, and I said, he didn't really have what was a great game, but other people disagreed. That the other people was Coach K. So I am clearly wrong here. In his press conference, he made note. They were like, well, James Banks really frustrated him, and his length was something that really mess with him. And he goes, his length would mess with anybody in college basketball. Giving due credit to James Banks and how he performed. Like you said, 3 blocks shy of a triple-double is nothing to sneeze at in any facet of the game on any level, especially when that triple-double is blocks. So I really, I like that he said, hey, look, Vernon Carey's going to have these nights where he's going to go up against some guys that have length, they have athleticism, and he's going to learn to deal with that. Those sort of things are part of this maturation process. And with Vernon Carey being thrust into the, in the eye, I mean, if you think about, like you said, he is one of the front runners for National Player of the Year at this point, and he plays 24 minutes a game. The last night, he didn't have a great game on, considering what we've seen him put on the stat sheet, but he still played 25 minutes. He had 14 points. He had 6 rebounds. That, for anyone else, is a solid contribution to the game. And I think there are times last night where he dominated, and there's times last night where he was humbled a little bit by James Banks' presence. And I think that is, the maturation process of this year. He is going to learn from that. And honestly, I feel bad for Wake Forest because I feel like Vernon Carey is going to take it out against Wake Forest on Saturday night.
You're probably right. Hey, look, before we go, there's one other guy I want to talk about really quickly. We've talked a lot about Vernon Carey because of James Banks and because Vernon Carey is such an important player. We've talked a lot about Jordan Goldwire, who, we think arguably, despite the stats, was the player of the game. And Coach K talked about it in the press conference. Cassius Stanley dunking all over the place. We've talked about all that stuff. We have not mentioned the name Tre Jones. Duke, by the way, sent me a press release and pointed out that Tre Jones in this game is the first player in Duke history. There have been a lot of players to play this game. Tre Jones is the first player in Duke history to get 16 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 4 steals, and a block shot in a game. That's never happened before in Duke history. I think it's the steals, combined with all those rebounds and assists that really, really elevated that statistical line. But he goes 5 of 7 from the field. There were numerous times down the stretch when it was a close one possession game where Tre got the key basket. His free throw shooting left something to be desired, which is surprising. I usually think of him as a great free throw shooter. I
mean, he shoots like 75, 80%, which is about what about what you expect from a college basketball player. And I mean, he was 5 for 10 last night.
Yeah. So, and he missed some clutch ones when the game was still really close. I was like, Tre, what you doing to me? Although one of the ones he missed, Coach K loved to point this out, turned into 2 extra points because Vernon Carey got a huge offensive rebound. This was a game Duke struggled rebounding in this game. I mean, for a team that has been dominant rebounding and one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country, we only got 7 offensive rebounds in this game. But anyway, my point in all this was to say, Tre Jones, I thought, had a truly excellent game and showed leadership the whole time. When Tech was making runs to give them the lead, runs to maybe begin to run away with the game, Tre was the calming influence throughout that entire contest. As much as Jay Gold was the MVP of this game, Tre's like right there alongside him, I think.
Yeah, and we'll see that. I expect we'll see that combination a lot more on Saturday night against Wake Forest. Before we go, we went this whole podcast, and we did not forget, but this podcast is brought to you by our friends at Bird Campbell, PA, with law offices in Florida and in Texas for all of your business law needs. Guys, Bird Campbell means business. Check them out at birdcampbell.com, and we appreciate, obviously, their support of the podcast. Jason, before we go, like we mentioned, we have the player of the week, the parting shots, and all that stuff. We're going to save those for the weekend. But just give me your final takeaway being in the house for this game against Georgia Tech.
My final takeaway is it's a really, really good win for Duke. I think it was a good win for the team to understand the caliber of play they need to bring every single day to win games. I think that's, super important for these guys. And there's been talk. Ken Pomeroy actually says that Duke has almost a 9% chance. I guess after this game, it may be closer to 10% chance of going undefeated in the ACC. The ACC is down this year, and the perception is that Duke is very, very good, and Duke has a chance to go undefeated in the ACC. I think this game shows us how difficult it will be to do something like that. We talk about it all the time. It's hard to win on the road, especially against rival teams that really get up for it, know you very well, know the kinds of things you're trying to do. And, Georgia Tech, I don't think is an NCAA tournament team. I'm not even certain they're going to end up making the NIT because their preseason schedule when they were injured and hurt was not impressive. But this shows you how hard it is to win a college basketball game. That opponents quite often play really, really well, maybe better than they usually do when they face you. And it's just winning any game on the road. I mean, winning at home isn't easy. Winning a game on the road is just really, really difficult. And so I thought it was a great effort on Duke's part playing against a Georgia Tech team that wanted it. I don't mean to be saying bad things about BC and Miami. BC and Miami did not want it nearly the way Georgia Tech did. And as a result, Duke wins by 30 plus versus this game. By the way, there was almost a backdoor cover in this game. From a gambling standpoint, Duke was a 12-point favorite. And it came considering if you had Tech plus 12, the entire second half, you're like sitting back like, I'm collecting my money, bring my money. And suddenly, like in the final minute, you're like, if this had been one of the worst bad beats ever, if Duke had gotten to 12 points, it would have been a terrible bad beat because it was a way closer game than the 9 points was. If it had gotten to 12, that would have been a crime.
Scott Van Pelt would have been talking about it on Late Night Sports Center if that had happened. I think my final takeaway, you talked a bit about it. Winning on the road is difficult. Winning on the road in the ACC is even more difficult. And so far in our road games, our true road games this year, we have gone to the Breslin Center. That's non-conference, obviously, but a big game. We've gone to Virginia Tech, to Miami, and to Georgia Tech. 3 of some of the more difficult places for us to play in the ACC, and walked out of there with victories. That is really, really good. And I think going down the line, that's only going to breed confidence for our team. We come home, we're going to play Wake Forest on Saturday night, and I think our guys will be ready for that. So this kind of confidence, going on road trips and getting the business W, I think is going to always help us. I don't know about going undefeated in the ACC, but I do know this. Going to some of these places and winning are going to be some of the hardest things that these guys do, and they're already doing it. So hats off to them, and hats off to the coaching staff for getting these guys ready to play and walking out of Atlanta with some Chick-fil-A and a couple of W's.
Hey, just really, really quick on that. One of the interesting things about Duke's schedule in the ACC this year is most people would say that there are 2 other really good teams in the ACC this year, Florida State and Louisville. We get both of them at Cameron. We do not go to Florida State. We do not go to Louisville. Now, Virginia, who most people would say is the 4th best team in the ACC, although they've been struggling. They've been struggling a lot lately. Looks like Virginia can't score, period. End of story. Anyway, Virginia is the really tough road game. We play at Virginia, play at Syracuse. But the toughest teams in the ACC, the guys that it looks like are surefire tournament teams, Sweet 16, caliber kind of clubs, if not Final Four. Those teams we get at Cameron. And that's one of the reasons I think people are talking about Duke maybe going undefeated in the ACC. Our toughest games are probably going to be at home.
Well, we can't go undefeated if we don't win Saturday night. So
amen.
We will look forward to that. Again, that game is at 8 p.m. I believe that's on the ACC network as well. Saturday night against Wake Forest at the friendly confines of Cameron Indoor Stadium. Until then, we're going to record after that. Hopefully we'll get Sam back from his travels, or at least in a recorded phase. But until then, we thank you guys for tuning in. This is Jason Evans in Atlanta. I'm Donald Wine here in Washington, D.C. This is the Duke Basketball Report Podcast, episode 181. Duke Band, take us home.